Hi, my name's Stuart Easton from Transparent Choice, and I'm delighted to host today Michael Hannan. He's an entrepreneur, best-selling author, professional speaker, and innovator of industry-leading techniques to drive unprecedented improvements in project portfolio performance. Actually, the reason I invited him along is because he's convinced me that he can really make a difference to the way portfolios are delivered. He's managed and consulted on $500 million portfolios and is the lead author of the book, The CIO's Guide to Breakthrough Project Portfolio Performance. And he really means that. So Mike serves on the board of PM for Change, a nonprofit that puts on the Project Management Day of Service, which is the largest project management pro bono event in the history of humankind. It's a really cool event. On the personal side, I was chatting with Mike the other day, and he tells me that he's not only a national champion track and field athlete, which is pretty intimidating, but he's also an amateur enophile. Am I pronouncing that correctly, Mike?
You got it, Stuart.
All right. So anyone who doesn't know what an enophile is, I had to go off and look it up. And so an enophile is someone who really is a connoisseur of wine, really appreciates the finer things in life. So there you go. Anyone has any questions on wine at the end of the show, just fire them across to Mike.
So emphasis on amateur enophile.
Excellent. So, and today, as I said, we invited Mike along because, I've seen him in action. I've seen him with customers. And normally my discussion with clients is around how project prioritization can increase the value they deliver from their portfolio by 20 to 40%. And when Mike first told me that he could easily double the performance of any portfolio, I kind of laughed. I didn't really believe it, but now I'm a believer. I've seen it, I've touched it, and it's pretty awesome. So today is not going to give you everything. It's not going to give you the whole show of how Mike does this, and it's really a set of tools that Mike has pulled together. I'm not sure, Mike, you would claim to have invented anything here, but he's really brought together a bunch of techniques and curated those and put those into a methodology, if you like, that really has a massive impact on the portfolio. So without any further ado, Mike, I'm going to hand across to you. And I look, hopefully over the next 20 minutes or so, we'll all have the scales fall away from our eyes and be as enthusiastic as I am.
Hey, great. Thanks, Stuart. Great intro. Appreciate that. And yeah, this whole thing about doubling performance, some of us might even wonder first off what that even means. And I think it's the reason we have trouble even grasping what that might mean is because we in the project management community haven't done a great job defining what performance even is. And we'll get into that a little bit today. But the point is, when you say easily double, I don't know how easily it is, but certainly it's been done by me and others more than a few times. So that suggests it's certainly quite possible and doable for most organizations. And frankly, the reason isn't because we've cracked some mystical code as much as we have to admit that we're still in the very early days of project management and managing portfolios of projects with high performance levels. So it's a little bit humbling to admit that we might still be in the dark ages like that. But hopefully as we go through the presentation today, I'll have at least some of you convinced. So with that, let's launch into it. You can see the title here, Maximum Impact, Saving Lives, Maximizing Profits, and Advancing Humankind. Again, the skeptics among us, and we in the project management community are nothing if not skeptics. You might say, well, that's a pretty over-the-top title, kind of melodramatic even. And why try and make project management sound sexier than it is, right? And I contend that that's the first problem, is we've set the bar too low. Indeed, if you think about some of the coolest, world-changing projects in the history of humankind, we are saving lives. We are maximizing profits, which might sound somewhat more humble, but certainly is elusive to many of us. We'd like to do a better job there if we're a commercial business. And yes, advancing humankind. In fact, I'd put this very first question to all of you. If if we're trying to advance humankind, however we might define that, how would you do it without projects? So ponder that a bit, and then we'll launch into some of the details here. So I thought it might be more interesting than the usual webinar to sort of get your attention here with what these things have in common. Very few of us, it seems, are even aware that one of the most incredible events of 9/11 was that almost 500,000 people were actually trapped in Lower Manhattan and could only be pulled to safety by sea lift. And that little picture off to the right, kind of hard to see, that's actually a YouTube video. If for any of you who care to check it out, just do a YouTube search on 9/11 boat lift, and you'll see that image come up, and you can check that video out yourself to see what I'm talking about. But bottom line is, if that sea lift rescue accomplished more than 35 times greater rescue power than the next biggest one in history, what was going on there, right? What led to that? What made that possible? So there's that one. And then here's a second one for you. And I'm not at liberty to mention who this company was, but there is some literature that you can probably find if you're sleuthing enough on the internet trying to find it. And again, they don't want their competitors to know their secrets on how they did this, but suffice it to say they did this, doubling the number of life-saving drugs it brought to market per year with no increase in cost. Project number 3 here. For any of you who understand the complexities of software development and rolling software into operation and doing so with high quality and minimum defects and bugs, to imagine putting new software into production every 11.7 seconds or 7,000 times a day is something that's just so foreign to most of us in the software world. It's almost unfathomable to ponder. And then one of my favorite ones, since I started my career at NASA and have a strong affinity to space programs all over the world, this commercial company, SpaceX, has done what the US government, the Russian government, Ariane Space in Europe, China's space program, none of these massive programs with all sorts of public support and strong, healthy levels of government funding, well into the billions. They've been trying to get this cost down for launch. This is cost per pound of cargo delivered into low Earth orbit. And this commercial company appeared on the scene roughly a decade ago, and over a very short span of time has done what no other entity has done and made these launches 5 times less costly than they had been. So you look at all these, and if you're like me, you might start scratching your head saying, well, certainly they all sound impressive, and that's why I picked them. But I could have picked a dozen more from different industries, different examples. And so beyond the fact that they sound impressive and they seem like quite dramatic improvements over whatever the previous precedent was, we might wonder, well, okay, well, clearly strong leadership must have had something to do with it. That's probably an easy one. Perhaps some aspect of innovating or improvising and having the freedom to experiment and try things. Clearly, that's got to be part of the equation. Perhaps you might guess some sense of very strong sense of mission or common purpose, strong unity of purpose among the teams that deliver these results. And again, it's hard to argue against that. It clearly must have been the case across these 4 examples. But is that enough? Because I would argue, having worked at places like NASA, NASA had all of those things. But why couldn't they achieve that threshold that SpaceX did? Right? Lots of great software companies are out there, and they fall far short of what Amazon is doing. Drug companies are strongly motivated by not just the profit motive, but that strong sense of impact of, hey, we're producing life-saving drugs and therapies and things that have a huge benefit to humankind. And so again, it's, in my mind, it's not sufficient to just say, well, good leadership, strong unity of purpose, strong sense of mission, potentially a culture of innovation or improvisation. There's something else going on here that is delivering these superlative results. And so I say that it's the method, but let's take a step back for a moment and say, in order to talk about things that sound kind of boring, like method, project management methodology, let's say, it's hard to imagine Elon Musk of SpaceX studying project management and the finer points there. It's hard to imagine Jeff Bezos of Amazon doing the same. That gentleman in the U.S. Coast Guard who led the 9/11 Sealish rescue, I've spoken with him, and he readily admitted that while they had done a lot of training for crisis management, they certainly had not studied any kind of project management methodology. But what I contend is all of these leaders, all of these organizational cultures thought of project management intuitively in a way that traditional practice has not. So if we go into the very basics of defining what a project is, there's lots of authorities on the subject out there, but let's just use PMI here. And they offer this definition, which sounds reasonable enough, but I contend incomplete, because if you look what these project performance leaders have intuited, or seem to have intuited, they get that they're there to get the maximum impact possible for whatever constrained set of resources they have to put into it. So this notion that it's actually an investment which could deliver unlimited upside. And so if we free ourselves to think of, not even the sky is the limit, and we're here to invest in some things that could well be quite risky, but we do so very hopefully with attaining not just some target threshold, some minimum, but with this sky's the limit, and not even the sky's the limit kind of thinking. So if we then take that to redefining project management, again, PMI basically says, okay, we're going to do all this stuff to meet requirements. Again, not incorrect, but not terribly inspired either. And I think the leaders who achieved these dramatic results on the previous slide, and dozens of other leaders who've done similarly great things, they seem to have intuited something slightly different, that we want to maximize the return on what we put into it. And again, it's not always financial return, right? You saw in the previous slide, there are certainly, drug companies are there to make a profit, but I think you talk to the people that work in them, and they don't talk about maximizing profits as much as they talk about saving lives and advancing humankind. You talk to people at SpaceX and even NASA and others who are trying to achieve these incredible performance improvements. They talk about becoming an interplanetary species. They don't just talk about reducing costs because that's what the accountants like to hear. They say we have to make interplanetary travel affordable. So they're thinking in terms of maximizing the return on investments that way. So again, not even the sky's the limit is how they seem to see the world. And so I think we can start by having all of us redefine projects and project management with this kind of thinking of unbridled enthusiasm for unlimited upside. And so if we start with that thinking as our foundation, we can then do what these leaders have not yet done. They've intuited these things, and they've organized their cultures around it, and they've fostered this sense of wonder and what might we achieve? Who knows? Let's go for something truly great, something truly unprecedented. But what if we could give them something more than just intuition? What if we could codify what they're intuiting into a set of disciplined, repeatable techniques? So without walking through each one of these little squares here, the point here is, even if this model is imperfect and could be improved, the point here is, why not have a more deliberate model for achieving such dramatic high impact? And if we start off at the very highest level saying that's our goal isn't just to deliver on project requirements. Our goal is to achieve that unlimited upside, right? Maximize this goal impact, whatever we define that to be. And if it's maximizing profits, great. If it's maximizing lives saved per hour, like the 9/11 Sea Lift rescuers did, great. If it's finding other ways to advance humankind, as SpaceX is trying to do by helping us become an interplanetary species, as odd as that might sound to us in 2016, they're very serious about that objective. And doing things like lowering the cost by a factor of 5 is step one, right? So the way I've organized all this, again, without going through the details, is just to point out there are disciplined techniques and methods that we can apply, engineered to deliver this maximum impact result we want. And I start on the left with getting more done. Again, it's rare we think in terms of getting a whole lot more projects done without necessarily investing any more resources. And there's certain techniques that have been proven that I did not invent that can help us do that. Again, we could achieve twice as many projects, 3 times as many projects, 5 times as many projects, 35 times as many people rescued per hour. Who knows what that limit is? So we start there because of that unlimited upside tendency and inherent nature. Then, of course, anyone that's familiar with project land knows that there's a reliability question, and we don't always deliver projects reliably. That's not just this organization or that organization or the big failures you might read about in the newspaper sometimes. That's endemic to how projects are managed using traditional common practice. So there are, again, a series of techniques to improve that. And of course, once you have the engine humming, delivering lots more projects, which means lots more value, lots more high impact results, and you're doing so more reliably, then where transparent choice comes in, of course, is column 3 here. You know, as investors trying to figure out what projects to choose that could deliver the most impact across our portfolios, whether it's a SpaceX portfolio of new launch vehicles, in a drug company's portfolio of new R&D projects to discover the next round of most effective life-saving drugs, or whatever however you define high impact. Of course, a key decision is selecting the right ones, and there's a lot of art to it. But what my friends at Transparent Choice would readily tell you is there's also decades of science behind it, and so some of these squares might sound kind of boring at first blush, like something your accountant might want you to do with net present value and so forth. But the bottom line is we're still trying to do that very bottom square. And we need a lot of things in place, like the analytic hierarchy process and other things that the Transparent Choice knows really well, to select projects based on the kind of impact they can help us deliver. And then, of course, we're still not done. There's a series of very interesting techniques that help us squeeze more and more high impact out of projects as we execute them. And very simply, it's just recognition that even if we've optimized things perfectly at the get-go, and we know we've picked the highest impact set of projects using all the best available techniques out there, things change. Right? Competitors are doing things that might change the landscape. Surprises occur that might change our view of what's feasible and what's not. Breakthroughs occur, which open up opportunities to fundamentally alter the path we're on and take advantage of potentially shorter paths to success. And again, there's a disciplined way to do this, which all those leaders on the previous slide intuited and kind of sort of figured out as they went. But imagine how much higher impact they could have been if they had a set of disciplined techniques like you're seeing here. So enough on that for now. Hopefully that gives you a taste. To learn more.
Sorry, Mike, just before you leave that slide, just one quick observation here. one quick observation here is that that goal impact that you have at the very, very top, it's really interesting that many of our customers, when we're implementing, the biggest challenge they have is in fact defining the goal or the goals so that they can actually measure that goal impact and have visibility into it, both when selecting projects and throughout the implementation cycle. So it's really interesting that actually being able to define that well, which is kind of some of the stuff that we do around AHP, being able to define that well is kind of core to being able to implement well. And selecting projects is a part of that, but really it's about defining that goal impact. What is it that we're trying to achieve so that you can align people, you can align processes, you can align projects behind that goal impact.
I couldn't have said it better, Stuart.
Cool.
And a lot of us in project space make this more complicated than it needs to be. Certainly, it's not inherently simple. Otherwise, we wouldn't, pay CEOs and portfolio managers the money we do. But I do think we overcomplicate it unnecessarily. I think clearly the 9/11 sea lift rescuers knew the goal intuitively right off the bat. Let's save as many people as possible as fast as possible. Again, even if you don't believe in the life-saving impact of what drug companies do, and all you care about is maximizing profits, again, that goal by itself should be pretty clear. Even if there's lots of different ways to try and go about it, and it's not always clear exactly which path to choose, the goal itself should be pretty clear in that case. Again, you read the Elon Musk biography, the founder and CEO of SpaceX, and he says very clearly, our goal is not to maximize profits. That's just sort of a necessary condition to keep things going. The goal is to become an interplanetary species. And he makes very clear that anyone that joins his team understands that and lives by that, and the projects they pick lead to that. So in a more regular everyday environment, you might think, well, I'm not launching rockets, to Mars or anything, but I've got a project that's designed to help improve employee morale. Well, why do I want to improve employee morale, and how do I know once I've done it? Well, that's a bit tricky, but certainly if improving employee morale doesn't help organizational performance, why do it? If improving our branding image in the eyes of customers, as fuzzy as that is, doesn't help us achieve more and more of the goal per dollar invested, then we need to look at other options. So I think especially in large organizations with different department heads and business unit leaders and all of that, different factions advocating for their own projects, etc., it often can seem overwhelming and confusing, but that's why with some disciplined techniques like what Transparent Choice offers, you can cut through a lot of the noise and get at some things that might surprise you what kind of common ground executive teams can have once that goal is understood. Okay, so to learn more, I do offer a free 4-hour planning workshop for those organizations who are genuinely interested in taking the first step. There are some additional free resources I make available. There's a few blog posts on this very subject, about redefining project management and going for high impact. You can check those out there. Some videos and podcasts and things that get at some of the same topics in more detail. Certainly, we can stay in touch. I rarely put out more than one email a month, so I won't spam you. Again, as Stuart mentioned in the intro, I did put this book out as lead author a couple of years ago. It's not quite as dramatic as some of the examples I've listed today, but that's by design, because again, most of us operate more in a day-to-day office setting. But even so, we're all after maximum impact here. And while I can't give that away for free, I've tried to make it affordable. And with that, Stuart, I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks for that, Mike. Really enjoyed that. I do want to recommend everybody takes a look at those resources and reaches out to Mike for follow-up. And as such, I would encourage you to go visit the blog, follow the blog, subscribe to the blog, right after you've subscribed to ours, of course, and see what a difference it can make for you. So with that, I want to thank you all for joining the session and wish you happy projects.